The futility of arguing with feminists. In my last video, I addressed this recent kerfuffle over male video game protagonists. I was addressing the feminist complaints about too many males in video games, but I was very clear to point out that I wasn't speaking to the feminists. Arguing with them is fruitless. I rather was explaining why we have so many male protagonists for those with the ability to think. Now, a friend of mine, a young lady I'm acquainted with, was in complete agreement with me, but she asked me to expand on that topic, simply because she sees so many men who are constantly trying to converse with feminists, who are trying to appease them, not realizing that there's no appeasement to be had there. Feminism is not a legitimate complaint, it is an endless complaint. They're just looking for something to complain about. And so she asked me if I could do this video to help nail that down for you guys, that if you think you can have a conversation with these women, I'm telling you right now that you can't. It's hopeless. Right off the bat, we're going to have to start with a bit of historical revision. We're going to have to actually get back to what really happened and not what you got learned in school. Because of course, the same way that we're all Freudians, the same way we're all Marxists nowadays, we're also all feminists. We've been fed this information constantly throughout our lives, from the schools, from TV, from ideologues, from politicians, on every spectrum. And so it's so tempting to say, well, these far-off feminists, these crazy ones, okay, they're a little bit wacky, but what about all the good feminism did? Well, what about all that good? Let's take women's suffrage, for example. Isn't that one of the great accomplishments of feminism? Well, quite frankly, no. No, see, the women's suffrage, women getting the vote, implies that there was a time when they didn't get the vote. And I will tell you right now, women voted in 1850. Women voted in 1800. This whole myth of women getting the vote is a mischaracterization of what was actually going on. You see, the vote used to be something reserved for households. This all goes back to the Magna Carta, that the law is above the king, that the nobles can enforce the law upon the king, so the nobles get to participate in the government. And then it expands from the nobles to not just those with the right birth, but those of prominent position. And so on, until you get to the point where anybody that owns a decent, reasonable amount of property gets to vote. It was the household that was voting. It wasn't the citizen that voted, it was the person that was invested in this country, in this economy, and they got to have a say in matters. If you are still working minimum wage at the age of 50, the idea back then was that you shouldn't vote. You have no idea how to run anything if you're still working at McDonald's at the age of 50. But if you've built a life for yourself, if you've accomplished something, then you are wise enough to have input in government. And so during the 1800s, we saw this expanding more and more. You know, the property value used to be this requirement, then it was this requirement, so on and so forth, until eventually it became all natural-born men in the country got to vote. And so what was the gap between all the men getting to vote and all the women getting to vote? In Britain, it was 7 years. There was a 7-year gap between the woman had to have a certain amount of property to vote and she just got to vote. 7 years. It was already in the works. This was a natural expansion of the franchise that had been going on for centuries. It had nothing to do with feminism, and there was never any oppressive regime that said that women had no place in politics. Queen Victoria. Alright, do we need to go back to Jerusalem? When Europe ruled it, it had a female queen? Okay, like we've had women in politics, we've had women active in politics, we've had them criticizing things in politics. Feminism had nothing to do with it. There was never any oppression. And what's the other big one? What's the other big accomplishment that you hear about that feminism did? Well, women in the workplace, right? Women weren't allowed to work back in 1900 or 1850. Once again, it's a load of moose drip. Women worked back then. In fact, there was no watershed moment where women started working. If you look at female employment rates, they have been steadily increasing over the past 2 centuries. The thing is, as we got more technology, and as jobs became easier, and as homemaking went from a 12-hour-a-day job to a 4-hour-a-day job, more and more women started working outside the home for an income, rather than working inside the home to invest in the household. Both are labor, both generate value, but one is taxable, the other isn't. This, again, had nothing to do with feminism. There's a couple of prominent examples of professions that didn't allow women, but those are the exceptions that prove the rule. Because they stood out, because most jobs had no standards. They probably wouldn't let a woman work in a coal mine because it was so dangerous, and men, us evil, evil men, like to protect women. But aside from something like that, yeah, women could do whatever they wanted. It's just that most of them wanted to get married and have children. There was no oppression. There was women making their own choices. As opposed to now, with feminist legislation, with affirmative action, we have a situation where most households need both the man and the woman out there in the workplace earning an income just to afford the bills. Those are the prominent ones. Okay, and there's more of them. Trust me, we could go on for hours. That anything you think feminism accomplished, it did not do that. Either they've grossly distorted the truth, or there's an entirely different social effect going on, or what they actually accomplished for women made women a lot worse off. There's a reason depression and eating disorders are far more common in the free, liberated year of 2013 than they were in 1953. And for one contemporary example, before we're done with this, if you want to learn more, just go look for it. You can find this stuff all over the place. Girl Writes What? Go check out her channel. She'll learn you about what a giant lie feminism is. But just one more example. So the woman that kicked all this off, is she a woman? Is this an organization, this Feminist Frequency? I don't know, and quite frankly, I could care less. Anyway, this Feminist Frequency, I caught about half of one of the third video she did, and first she's complaining about the patriarchal, cisgendered, sexist, violent rape trope of rescue the princess. How evil and bad it is that us guys want to rescue the princess, and the princesses want to be rescued. And then she says, but that one game where Princess Peach has to rescue Mario, well, that's just inverting the trope, so it's no good. Alright, so the trope is no good. The inversion of the trope is no good. What is good? And the answer is nothing. If you watch her videos and pay attention, they are absolutely incoherent. Feminism. Lies or fallacies. That's all it is. Now, of course, this leads us to the question, why? Why? Because we're sane people. If we are arguing about something, if we say that we think something is unfair, it's because we honestly think it is fair and we want to correct it. Whether we're being the one victimized or if somebody else is being victimized. We actually have a conversation about that. So, why would so many of these women, so many of these ideological women, why would they be saying that video games are unfair, the workplace is unfair, etc., whatever, it's unfair, if they don't actually believe that, if they don't actually have a genuine complaint or a genuine coherent argument? Let's look at misogyny first, to ease into what's going on in that female brain. Now, misogyny, and I mean actual clinical misogyny, the mental disorder, is something that occurs in men when they have an extremely abusive mother. the fact about men is that we need comfort, we need admiration, and we need sexual love from a woman. That without those things, at least without the hope of one day getting those things, we're extremely broken. Those are human needs that we have. We need that love of a woman in our life. But if as a child you have an extremely abusive mother, then your ability to love women is injured by that, or your ability to trust women. So you still need this love and admiration from a woman, but you don't trust women. You think that they're all going to act the exact same way that your mother acted when she abused you. And so this is why you get and there's truth to the stereotype, it's a very small number of men rather than all men, that certain men do undermine the egos of their wives, of their partners. They do injure them emotionally, so that that woman is too broken to ever leave him, to ever abandon him, to ever harm him. So what these men wind up with is a wife that's not even a wife, because the only reason she's with him is because she's broken. And so this very real emotional need inside their heart is left void. And so they get angrier and angrier. This is what happens when you have a mental disorder that's been put onto you by your parents. That's what misogyny is. It's actually pretty rare, but it does exist. Now what about women? Men, we need the admiration. We need the compassion. We need that sexual love. For women, what women need in their lives is a man they can admire, a man that's strong, who can protect them, and a man who they can sexually worship. And these feminists have a big gaping void in their soul where that man is supposed to be. These feminists are so angry at men, they are so misandric, and it could be because they went through some abuse as a child from a really terrible father. Or maybe they just internalized so much of this negative dialogue that's shoved down our throats by the mainstream media, by the universities, that they wound up hating men through that. Whatever the cause, this idea of man, this hope for that sort of love that all women need, it's a black gaping void in their soul that will never be filled. Even if you're single and you haven't found the right partner yet, you can imagine that woman that comforts and cares about you. You can imagine that man that protects and loves you. But these women have rejected the notion. They've decided that all men, the nature of masculinity is evil and hatred and abuse and just violent dominance. And so where their heart is supposed to be is nothing but hatred. Nothing but disgust and angst and self-loathing that they project out onto the world. And so these women, these girls like Feminist Frequency, they see you guys out there playing your video games. You're having a gay old time. You and your girlfriends are all getting along perfectly happy. Everything's fine. The kids are being taken care of. We have a productive and healthy society. Their response is just vile loathing of that. Loathing of the fact that anybody can be happy, that you're not sharing in their misery. And so feminists hunt around looking for anything to complain about. They look for anything to nitpick. Listen, men and women are different. You're always going to be able to find statistics of inequality between them because men and women make different choices. Women like taller men, men like shorter women, generally speaking. And so that's an inequality you're going to find between them. So they find these inequalities and then they come up with an argument. They come up with some BS argument about why this inequality shows that men are horrible, violent, abusive, and we don't have enough democracy, or whatever they're calling it now. We have too much free market capitalism. We don't have enough free market capitalism. They just want to destroy anything good. So when these women come into your community and start complaining about this, it's bullshit. There was a guy recently on, I think it was a year or two ago. He's on some video game show, and there was a female player on the show who loved gaming, who was just a geek girl, didn't seem like any sort of feminist to me, and he started bullying her. You didn't need feminism to protect that girl. Everybody saw what he was doing and saw that it was bullying. There have been girls playing video games all this time. And most guys will stick up with them, stick up for them. Aside from the 13-year-old idiots on whatever the latest shooter program is, but that's nothing but scatology anyway. The feminists just find these things and latch onto them and try and create an argument. Then they try and get money from the government because they're useless people that could never compete. They could never make a video game. You show me a woman that's made a video game, she won't be a feminist. You show me a woman that could never make a video game, well, now that geek culture is popular, she's going to claim it was because of oppression. You cannot have a conversation with these people. You cannot discuss with them. They are not honest arguers. They are angry, sad, and broken people. And so anytime you give them an inch, you're giving them a mile. You're letting the camel get its nose in the tent. All they want to do is destroy video gaming culture, or destroy bar culture, or destroy the corporate culture, or anything else that they get their nose into. They're not trying to make things fair. They're trying to make it miserable for everybody. Now I'd like to finish off on somewhat related note. I was almost going to make this into a video of its own, except it's not quite enough for that. The title would have been, "The Girlies Go Crazy for the Right-Wing Man." So many of us feel like we're walking around on eggshells all the time. That if you say the wrong thing, you're going to offend somebody and get in trouble. That you have to be politically incorrect, or you have to be politically correct all the time. And so many guys feel like if you badmouth feminism in public, that the girl that you're trying to get with is not going to like you. She's going to think you're a terrible human being. She's going to get angry at you and you'll kill your social life. Nothing could be further from the truth. The fact of the matter is that girls love strong men who are confident in what they believe. If you state something confidently, doesn't matter what her women's studies professor thinks about it, she will like the fact that you said it with confidence. She will like you for having the confidence, not because of what you believe. Whereas if you are a simpering beta male trying to suck up to her, that, yeah, she'll hang out with you, but she'll never date you. There's an exception to this, of course. If you are in a workplace, especially a workplace with a bunch of haggard old HR women running it, and you state what you think as unequivocally true, these women will grow furious. But the reason they're growing furious isn't what you would think. See, a guy, if you said something he disagreed with, might get angry at you personally. But these HR women, the reason it's so dangerous to say this sort of stuff in front of the HR women is because then they want to sleep with you. And at the same time they realize that you would never sleep with them. You're reminding them that they are losers in the sexual marketplace. And so that's why they attack you, to get rid of you. But when you're at the party, heck, I was at this party with a whole bunch of young university GLBTs. Hippie, dippy, Marxist, everything. And the whole time, now normally I try and speak very intelligently about things and not be mean for no reason. But when you have a bunch of people whose main hobby is sitting in the basement and hating God all day, I'm just going to make them dance for my amusement. So I was being a complete right-wing jerk. And they were getting so offended, aside from the cute one with the Skrillex haircut, who kept inching closer to me on the bench and telling me what a horrible person I was as she stared deeply into my eyes. You cannot go wrong by being two right-wing men. Even the hippy-dippy girls will love it. All of her friends told her to stay away from me after that, so of course she did the exact opposite. Certainly, there are a few feminists out there who are just, they're girls brainwashed by the same way all you guys are brainwashed. And a quick conversation with them will sort things out. But the real feminists, the ideologue feminists, these losers at life that just hate you for not sucking, these are the ones that you don't argue with. Quite frankly, that Naomi girl that keeps writing so much libel about me, and I do mean libel, do you think she's doing it because she disagrees with me or because I disagree with her? Or is she doing it because she's desperately in love with me and knows that I would never touch her? These feminists just don't want you to be happy. They want your misery, and anytime you engage with them, you're playing their game. It's not about logic, it's not about truth, it's about them trying to destroy everything that's true and good. So enjoy your culture, don't argue with disingenuous arguers, and certainly if you think I'm making this stuff up, go look into it. Go subscribe to Girl Writes What. She'll lay down the flat truth for you. Irini out, folks.